it's Pauline back again, and this is Tools, Tips and Techniques. This is the third part series to this one, just showing you a lot of the tools that I love to use, why I use them. We've already covered in the first episode how to fold your fabric and cut your triangles and make accurate triangles, pin, press, all of those sorts of things. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch, because it's all about preparing your fabric right from the beginning. So you never have to go back and refold through the making of your project. So you get so little waste out of doing it using this technique. Then in the second session, we went over how to use the bias sasha ruler to cut your fabric on the true bias so that you can get lovely, lovely designs that have bias around the edge of them. You may not have already seen this, but you can get beautiful look with your bias around there. So I showed you how to make 1/4 inch bias, gave you lots of hints and tips, and I also showed you how to make 1/8 of an inch for those that want to do stems for applique and intricate work. So now we're going to just show you a mismatch of all different things, some of my favourite tools, how I use them and why I use them. I'm going to start with the Bohin fabric marking pencil. Now, over the years, I've recommended this to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of quilts all around the world, and I do believe it has to be, if not the best, very close to the best marking pencil on the market worldwide. So we have, when it's white here, you know that it's coming with the white lead. If it was black in this channel here, it's coming with the grey lead. But no matter which way you buy from us, you will always get the white and the grey lead included in your package. So now you can mark any coloured fabric. But I want to show you how to set it up with both coloured leads in there so that you don't have to spend a lot of time changing it over, or to save yourself money in buying two. A lot of people do buy two so that they're always running one black, one white. But if you're on a budget and just want to have the one with the two sets of leads, let me show you how we set it up. So if you were to buy the one that had the white lead with it, you will have two white leads in that cylinder. If you were to buy the one that had the grey lead in it, you'd have two grey leads in there. So we're simply I'm going to work with the white one. We're going to simply hold it upright and pull the top off. See, I've just pulled the top. Then I'm going to tip out that second lead that's in there. This is just a short piece, but normally it would come with a full length lead. Then I'm going to go to my grey lead, 3 fills. I'm going to get one of those out of there. Put the lid back on so I don't lose them. So I've already got one white lead in that cylinder. I'm now going to put this grey lead in here. I'm going to put the top back on. Now, a little tip, and this is where a lot of people get stuck. When you put that lead in, no matter whether you're putting a second colour in or you're just putting a refill in, around the edge inside, and if you look down in it, you'll see there's a little ledge, a tiny little ledge. Now, when you put that lead in there, make sure you get your pencil and you shake it so that it goes down and doesn't get caught on that ledge. If the lead gets caught on that ledge in there and you put this top on, up in here is a spring. And I found if it's stuck on the ledge and you put this on and push down hard on it, you're going to crack the lead and it's going to go up into the spring and it will jam your spring and your pencil will not work. So remember, lead in, shake. So you know it's gone right down. Now pop your lid on. You'll hear it click on. Now click down the lead. There's my white lead that was already in there. Now if I went to draw with this, let's bring this fabric over so you can see how far that lead's coming out. If I went to draw on this fabric now with that lead, I'm possibly going to break it, snap it off, and that's going to waste your lead. So if your lead comes out too far, hold your pencil upright, not to the side, not on an angle, upright. Push down on that top. You'll feel the spring let go. while pushing down and holding it upright. Put your finger underneath and push the lead right back up inside. I can't see it, but I can still draw. And I'm not going to break the lead because it's not out far enough to be able to snap. It's protected by that little silver casing that comes around it. So see that? I can draw for so long and that lead will not break. Now, the good thing about it, it has an eraser on the end, and a lot of people don't realise that if you wind it up, you have a very long eraser. Mine's worn right down because I'm using it all the time. But very, very soon we'll have the replacement erasers for you that you'll be able to buy them in a pack of 3, pop it in, and then you can keep using your pencil. And all you've got to do is keep buying your little cylinders of grey and white leads. Now, if I want to get rid of that, I can erase it. If I iron over these marks, they're not going to permanently set because there's nothing in it that's going to allow that to permanently set. There's nothing in it that's going to allow that to damage my fabric. So if I didn't want to erase all those lines out, if I went and now washed this, all those lines will wash out. If I spray it with water, they're not going to disappear. A lot of times you can get another bit of fabric and rub it and it will come off. So now when I want to mark onto my lighter coloured fabrics, I'm going to push this top down, keep clicking till I see my lead come out a fair length, hold the top down and pull this white lead out. You must be always pushing down on the top and holding it down to pull this out. Now I'm going to click down the grey lead. There's my grey lead. I'm going to take the top off and put the white lead straight back in. So now I've got the 2 coloured leads in there. This is a new lead. It's out a long way, so I want to push it back, but I'm not going to go all the way back because what I need to do now, because it's a new lead, they're being cut across and they're quite sharp. They've got a scratchy edge to them. So I get a piece of paper or a scrap of fabric, rub it on to get a nice rounded edge so that when I draw on the fabric, it's still grabbing a bit. Get that nice rounded edge. So now it just smoothly runs across the fabric. Once again, I can click down, push the lead right back up, and I can now draw as much as I want. But with the grey lead, just a very, very good hint. The harder you press with the grey lead, the harder it's going to be for you to wash out or erase out. So my recommendation is when you're marking with the grey lead, just press hard enough to get a faint line that you can see under a light, under the light of your sewing machine. Because if I'm sewing along here and I make a mistake, I can come back and erase it. But if I'm drawing too heavy, it's going to take a lot more effort to erase that line out, and it'll take a lot more effort to wash it out. So they're just a couple of little hints and tips with the Bohin fabric marking pencil, but they're a question I get asked all the time. How do I set it up? Why won't it push down? What have I done wrong? Why is it not working? Usually because you've got that lead stuck in that little spring. So just keep practicing and getting it right and you'll have great results with this marker. The other thing that I, when I'm doing quilting a grid or I just want to do straight lines on my fabric for quilting or for drawing up lines for anything, if this was a piece of fabric that I wanted to quilt and I've got my 3 layers sandwiched together, my backing, my top and my wadding, if I just wanted to do straight lines and get them perfectly straight, I love to use a Hera Marker. This is a great little tool. So if I was drawing lines on this piece of fabric, I'd probably just pick up my normal ruler and I'd probably find the centre and start drawing from the centre out to get my grid even. But if you've never used one of these or been introduced to them, they're a plastic tool and it puts a crease in your fabric. So just hold your ruler and mark. Run up and down a couple of times. And I don't know if you can see it there, but I'm getting a beautiful crease in my fabric. So now I could just go ahead, line it up again and mark. And it's very quick and easy to mark up your stitching lines. Now, by any chance, if I made a mistake, oops, yep, we all make mistakes, and I'd made that line crooked or I didn't want it there anymore, just grab your hot iron and you can press those creases out. So there's no marks to get rid of, just a hot iron will get rid of those marks, and that crease will eventually come out of the fabric and you can start again. So if you don't know about it, it's a very, very handy little tool. It is called a Hera Marker. They're on our website. Now, what else can I show you? We did, I'll keep that little bit of lead. We did in the first session in this series, we did introduce you to the triangle rulers. I wanted to show you what this long one was for because I never showed you what it was for in that first session. But if I want to cut a circle of any size or mark out a circle of any size, this is what I use. So this will draw you a circle anywhere from 1/2 inch to 20 inches. Now there's 1/2 inch increments at every one of those holes. The measurements are written there very finely for you. So what we do is put a pin in at the measurement you want your circle to be. Okay, put a pin in. So I usually do this on the ironing surface so I can get the pin into the surface. You just need to clear yourself a bit of room. Grab your marking pencil, have your lead out so that it's long enough to go through that hole. So you're going to put your pencil in at the 0 mark. And all you're going to do, well, hopefully I'm not too close to the edge or just made it, I'm going to draw a circle. And there I have a perfect circle drawn. Then I can come to my rotating cutting mat, get my little mini cutter, and I can cut that circle. And the little blade is so easy to use for small things. That's why I absolutely love it. Oops, didn't press hard enough. Goodness me, I couldn't have got any closer to the edge if I tried. So there's my circle cut. Then I could quilt my fabric up. I could have this all quilted, doesn't matter what size I want to put this on. I'd come then to my Roxanne glue basted, use a little end because it's just a small piece. Put some glue around, a couple of dots in the middle. Put that in place. If I'm happy, and I've spilled a bit of glue, that doesn't matter because I can just wipe it away. If I'm happy that that's where I want it to be, I can iron it to set the glue quickly. You can let the glue dry naturally, but it might take, half an hour or so, and you usually want to move on pretty quick. But if I find that I don't want that anymore there and I want to move it to somewhere else, I'll get a damp cloth and damp that glue out, or I could, reposition this again, come back and glue it in place. So if I've ironed that down and I've had it there ironed down for a week, a month, 2 years, and I haven't yet stitched it, and I come back and I don't like it anymore, you can always take it off. The glue is never permanent. So then I get a damp cloth and damp out that glue residue, all good. So that's why I, introduced you to a few of the tools, but I want to show you that there's other uses for them besides just what I've showed you in the first 2 programs. So hopefully you can get lots of hints and tips from this. A good unpicker is always good. I love the clover unpicker because I usually just go through and go under about every 5th or 6th stitch and just pull it out. And a lot of times when we're unpicking and we pull our threads out, and particularly with the polyester threads, and I use a lot of polyester threads when I'm quilting. I like to use a good fine thread when I'm quilting to give me a nice look. But a lot of times we're left with all of this fluff and it's hard to pick it all up. It's always there. So this was a little tool and it's really, really interesting. It looks like a bit of sponge, but it's not. It is for cleaning up your threads. It's really designed so it helps you pick up the threads. But this little thing here is really designed to clean your rotary cutting mat, believe it or not. And you're probably like me, over the years, you've been using your mat for a long, long time, and you start to get the grooves in it where the thread gets caught, the wadding gets caught. This is made for cleaning up your mat. And if I had threads caught in the grooves here, but this is a new mat, I've got rid of my old one, but when I had my old mat, I would just rub this across it, rub hard, and it pulls all those threads out of those grooves. Like, it's a great little tool. It's not just a normal sponge. It's made specially for removing thread off fabric or off your cutting mat. So that's another thing we're going to be taking pre-orders on. Okay, more and more and more things. Rotary cutters. I showed you the two cutters, big one in first session, little one in the second session. I have a lot of people, particularly with the little one, not understanding how that operates. Please, if you're going to buy these, take it out of the packet and please turn it over and open it up, because all of our steps are in here of how to change your blades properly, how to use your cutter properly, how to keep it maintained properly. And a lot of people just take it out and we start using it. I was one of those people. And with the small cutter, we'll go with the big one first. You just undo this, the blade will pop out. Now, if I undo this, the blade pops out. So we all know to be careful when we're changing a blade. But these cutters are made for left and right-handed people, which is fantastic. So it's always sold as a right-hander. And I don't know if you can see, there is a big R here. So when I removed the blade, this R was facing up. Now, if you're a left-hander, you're just going to take that off and turn it over and you've got the L. So now it's left-handed. You would pick your blade up, put it in. It hasn't got all the washers and that a lot of the cutters have. It just has this little nut that you put in there and you just tighten this up at the back. And it's very, very simple to change the blade. Now it's left-handed. I could never use that. I could never cut left-handed. But for those lefties, fabulous. But remember, never let that cutter go down on your table or never talk with it in your hand with that blade open. Always closed, please. Don't want you cutting yourself. Now, with the little one, I'll demonstrate with mine. There is two little slider buttons on this one. There is the one at the front of the cutter. That is what exposes the blade for you to cut with. That's where you open the blade and close it. Now, mine is set up with the R because I'm right-handed. So the same thing if you were left-handed, you would go to the back. Now, notice here that it's got another slide. Instead of a little nut like this one's got, a little bolt, it's got a slide. So the only time you're going to release that slide is if you want to change it to left-handed or if you need to put a new blade in. A lot of people pull that down, like I'm going to now. This comes off. And we do need to take our cutters apart quite regularly and clean off all the fluff and lint that builds up under there, because our fabric does create that. Now, when I put this back on, oops, got to pick it up first. I'm going to put it back with the R facing up. Now, the little trick with this, and this is where it's going to be very hard for the camera to pick this up, but I'll explain it the best I can. When we get our blades, we sell them in a pack of 2. When you buy any blades these days, you'll notice that their oil is on them. That told me a long time ago that we should be oiling our blades regularly. So I use machine oil and I put a little drop of oil on there with a cloth, rub it around, keeps your blade in a much better condition. But with this little blade, you can see it's got two little cutouts at the side. On this little, what I call the post, there is two little lugs on either side of the post. So when I put this blade back on, just have to pick it up and do it. I want to make sure that when I do this, that cutouts in the blades are sitting exactly aligned with those lugs. So the lugs are coming up through the blade. Because if you don't do that, if you just plonk it on and the cutouts are not over the lugs, when you use your rotary cutter, you're going to shave those little lugs off and your blade will not work. That's why we need to tell you to read the instructions, because inside here, it tells you all of those things. And I had to learn the hard way. Pull this down, put your cutter over the top, hold it firmly. Oops, I just haven't got it lugged there. I heard it click in. Now I press that up. So now my cutter is ready to roll again. It'll roll perfectly. If it wasn't rolling perfectly, if it was catching a little bit, I know that those two cutouts are not through those lugs. So I hope that gives you a really big tip. Tell all your friends about that, because if you shave those lugs off, you've wrecked your cutter forever, because they don't sell that little replacement part. So make sure you follow that one. Introduce you to the flower head pins when I was folding my fabric, because you need to use very flat pins so that when you've pinned up and you've got your ruler over the top of it, your ruler's not going to wobble. It sits perfectly flat. You don't want that wobbling, so you don't want the pins that have got a little bit of a raised head. That's why I use these particular ones. They're nice and sharp, and they're the ones that I found the head of the pin is the flattest out of all of them. Now, what else? Monopoly thread. Everybody knows that I adore the monopoly thread. I use it in quilting. I use it in joining my quilts together. Quilt as you go. A little tip. A lot of people, when they take the cover off this, they don't realise that underneath there, inside there, and it's hard for you to see, so I'm going to show you mine here. When you take this out of the packet, this little bit of gauze is folded up underneath here. It's inside that packet. And a lot of people, this just falls on the floor and they don't realise how important that is. I call it a gauze jacket. So we've undone the end of the spool. We've got the thread. Just wind it up a bit. Oops, all caught up around my fingers. Wind it around. You just want the tail of the thread coming out, and I know it's invisible, it's hard to see. But what we want to do now is put this jacket on. Put your fingers around it so it goes back into shape and fits there beautifully. Now we're going to, when we fill our bobbin, we have that jacket on. When we sew on our machine, we're going to have that jacket on. When we store it in our thread drawer, we're going to have the jacket on. And your thread is just going to come out from underneath it. Because it's such a fine thread, you need it controlled. So that jacket controls that thread for you, and it comes off beautifully. So remember, you need to use that. Also remember, don't use a full monofilament thread that's nylon. Use the monopoly. Won't melt, doesn't jam up on your machine, tensions into your machine beautifully. Beautiful thread to use. Now, threads. Just want to talk to you about the threads that I'm now using to do all my quilting. I'm loving to use the Wonderful threads. It's a brand, which is a beautiful brand. They're wonderful by brand and wonderful to use, so it's a very appropriate name for the company. This is the Deco Bob. This is what I love to use in my bobbin a lot of times when I'm quilting, and I also use it a lot when I'm quilting. This thread here was the white Deco Bob that I used, and it's an 80 weight, so it's nice and fine. And because I use the control quilting technique where I'll be stitching back over previous rows of stitching, I don't want a thick thread. I want a really, really fine thread. So I need to have it controlled going through the machine. So Wonderful have been absolutely brilliant, and they've designed this little thread dispenser, which I thought when I first started seeing them, is that really worth it? But let me tell you, it is absolutely worth it. It fits their spools perfectly. So we've got this little round hole. It doesn't fit a lot of threads. There it is there. Put your thread on there. Now it has a little split in either side. So what I'm going to do is, if I had this thread undone, I would be putting my thread through that little split. Now on our machines, a lot of machines have an upright post. If you don't have one that's attached to your machine, you may have it in your toolbox and it may fit, maybe a little hole for it to fit in somewhere. Stand this on the little post. If you don't have a post, and if this was my machine here, I would be having this standing behind the machine, this thread going through this little split and then coming up into my tension disc. But if it's on the machine, it's going to sit there, thread's going to go through that little split and come over into your tension. Now, why this is so effective is, I couldn't work it out at first, but I was having trouble with my threads jamming as they went through the tension, because all of our threads are wound on a spool and we never know how long they've been there for. And particularly with the fine threads, they get a memory of that crease of where they've been rolled around the spool. So as it comes off the spool, you can have that little twist in it. Now, if that twist goes into that top tension, that's where the thread can split and jam up. So what this little device does, because when our thread comes off the spool, it unwinds, right? The spool stays stationary and the thread just unwinds. So it's got that little curl in it. With this going through, the thread going through this little post, and with this is so clever, this little device, this top part spins. It's not stationary, it just spins. So when I put my spool on here and I'm sewing, the actual spool is turning as the thread's coming off, and the thread's always coming off the same side of the spool, and it's not getting caught up. And it's got rid of all the twists out of it. So since I've started using that, I have never had my thread split once. So we're going to be in our Exquisite Quilt program in the next episode. We're going to be setting this up on the machine and using it, and you'll get a really great surprise of how brilliantly this little thread dispenser works with this wonderful thread. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing is, I use the titanium top stitch needles. I use a top stitch needle because it has got a very big eye. And when we're using the fine threads, we don't want the fine thread going through a fine-eyed needle, because it can build up a heat friction. And a heat friction with the thread running through the needle, it can also split the threads. So using a big-eyed needle, you're not getting that build-up of heat friction, and your thread doesn't split. Also, a titanium-coated needle is a much stronger needle than what a nickel-plated needle is. Most of our needles are nickel-plated. They can go very blunt very quick. I can get like 100, 200, 250, 300 hours out of one needle before it even starts to show any sign of going blunt. Using the normal nickel-plated needles, I wouldn't even get halfway through a quilt and I could hear it pinging and skipping stitches. And I'd have to change the needles, and I was going through lots of needles. These last me for years. So they're the needles that I recommend. Now, quickly with the rulers, we now design our own rulers because of a lot of problems I was having, a lot of problems that I was seeing in the classroom when I was teaching classes. One of the main reasons that we were seeing that there were problem was markings on rulers not being consistent, not all measuring the same measurement. And that is a very common problem. It's common in the same brand rulers as well as it is in different brand rulers. So if you're going to pick up this brand ruler today and do some cutting, and then tomorrow you pick up this brand ruler, they may be 3 or 4 threads out in their measurement. There becomes a problem with accuracy. Even same brand rulers that can happen with. So that was one major problem, because a lot of the rulers at the inch marks have quite thick lines, so you can see it. Then when I did a lot of research, I was finding that a lot of the rulers with the thick line at the inch marks had thinner lines at the 1/4 and the 1/2 inch lines. Well, I couldn't see the consistency in that. My belief is that every line on every ruler should only be as thick as the thread you're using. So if you're using rulers, you've got a little bit of inaccuracy happening, get your normal sewing thread and lay it down on those lines and see that it doesn't go outside those lines, or that the lines on the rulers don't go outside your thread, more to the point. If they do, where is the accurate cutting measurement on your ruler? So we design our rulers that every line is only 1 thread thickness. So if I lay any thread on that, it's the thickness of that line. So it doesn't matter whether I cut on this side of the line or that side of the line, I get accuracy because that is the thickness of my thread. When I lay all my rulers out on top of each other, and this is a little test for you to do, just want to move this off the table. Put your rulers, get all the rulers that you use, put them out on the table. I'll just get a selection here. We want you to have them all level. We're just going to lay these out. So get them all level, get something like your tailor's awl, run it along so that you know that all your edges are level. That's very hard to see over there. Get all your edges level. You may just want to do one at a time instead of lining them up like that, because they get a bit slippery. Make sure your edges are level on this side. Make sure the edges are level here. Then stand right over them and look right down into them. If one line is off the other, don't interact those two rulers together, because that's where you'll get the inaccuracy. When we put all of our rulers together, we know every line sits exactly on top of each other. And we can pick up any ruler in the process of making something and everything comes together accurately. So we've put a lot of work into designing accurate rulers. The other thing that I found that people were having problems with was rulers slipping when we're cutting. So when we design our rulers, we've made sure on the back side of them, hear that? You can probably hear that on my microphone. We engrave into the ruler. So when we put it down on our fabric and we're cutting, so we'll just put this down. Let's put our cutting mat down. When we put this down and put this on top, we don't have to put all that downward pressure on like you do with a lot of rulers. A lot of people use big attachments to put on their rulers. They use sticky stuff underneath. There's so many great things out there to put on your rulers, but that's another expense. With these, it's already built into the ruler. It will never wear out because it's an engraving into the ruler. So when I'm going to cut now, I've just got everything ready to cut. I don't have to put this really heavy pressure down. I can just slide across. This is probably my most favourite ruler. It's 8.5 by, 8.5 by 12. But see how nicely it fits on the fabric? It holds the fabric beautifully for me. I love a nice wide ruler. I'm not into using big long rulers like a lot of people are, because if I fold my fabric in half and cut, I find it takes extra time and extra stretching. Folding your fabric into 4, like I showed you in the first session, is very easy. One cut. And having the rotating mat now, boy, has that changed my way of cutting. It's absolutely brilliant. So they're just a few of the little tools. So this is the 8.5 by 12. We do have the 24 by 6 inch. The little mini ruler is a great one. It's 2.5 by 8.5. It's a really fabulous little ruler for just marking up and doing little, when you're doing those little squares You want to do a 2.5 inch square, this is so good. What's this one? This one is, I've got to think about it, 5x9, another little handy ruler. This is probably the most popular ruler out of the whole range. This is 12x6, fabric folded into 4, fits on there perfect. And then, of course, we've got all different size squares. We've got 6.5 inch squares, 8.5, 9.5, 12.5, 15.5. So we're building on our range of rulers to give you a whole different system. If you are having trouble getting your points accurate and cutting your strips accurately, just follow me and let me teach you a lot more things about what we do. Then don't forget we've got all of our quilting products. We've got all of our different templates for quilting. If you're following us on our Exquisite Quilt program, you're going to be using a lot of these to create beautiful designs. We'll be using the Quilt As You Go book as we go through that program. We're using the dot to dots and we're using the feathers. So join us because we've got a lot to teach you. Don't forget the sew slip mat. Put this on your machine, leave it on your machine permanently. This one's designed with your feed dogs up. Leave it on there for everything you do, and it just makes your fabric slide through beautifully. Any questions? Put them up there for us. We'll answer those questions. We'll go through different things with you again if you need us to. But we're here to educate you. We're here to show you the tools that we love. We're here to have a fun time with you. So keep joining us. Join us on our Facebook because we're going to be going live on Facebook a lot more regularly this year. We've caught up on everything, so we're going to be doing that. You might see me anywhere in the world because I've got some big things happening this year. Join us on Instagram. We really would love to increase our Instagram viewers, so please join us there. Join us on YouTube. Join us at all the craft shows that we do around the world. We'll see you somewhere out there in the big wide world. Stay safe till we do. Go to our website, www.pqw.com.au. Have a look. Subscribe to all those channels. If you don't subscribe, you're not going to be able to follow us. So we'll see you somewhere soon. Bye for now.